Mis amigos, de marketing mexicanos, hola, hola. Hello, fuckers, how are you? How are you? I have no more Spanish, that's it, I'm done. The rest is in English, okay? So we have 1 hour, yeah? But it's a really important hour because we live in a golden era of advertising effectiveness. If you do a lot of reading about marketing, about advertising, if you study it, you will know that in the last 10 years, we have learned so much about advertising. And my job in this next hour is to summarize 10 years into 1 hour, okay? Some of this stuff you will know. Some of it you won't know. But if you can get it into your head, into your company, into your advertising, it will work, okay? We will make sure you get these slides. They will be offered to you by Effie, along with a little reading list of more material. Everything I talk about here, we will send it out to you. And it means you can quickly become very advanced if you stay with me for the next 60 minutes, okay? Okay, so we live in this golden age of effectiveness. Lots of great researchers, Byron Sharp, Peter Field, Les Binet, lots of great companies, System 1, Kantar, yeah? And of course, Effie, are making us more and more expert in how advertising really works. This is my job. And so what I want to give you today is an omnibus de efectividad, okay? An omnibus of advertising effectiveness. I've spent the last couple of weeks pulling it all together just for you, okay? And in this hour, I want to take you through my omnibus. And it only has 10 chapters. There are 10 things I want you to know, to remember, that will make your advertising better, okay? Let's start with the first of our 10 chapters. Let's start with the concept of briefing. So here I'm not talking about the creative brief. I'm talking about the brief from the client to the agency, okay? Just as a show of hands, because I love this about Effie. We have the clients, we have the agencies here. Show of hands if you're on the client side. Clients. Hola, hola. Show of hands if you're on the agency side. Yes, yes. More agencies. Okay, okay, okay. We're going to give the clients a bit of shit now, okay? But not you, just all the other clients that aren't here yet, okay? Okay, so I work with a company called the Better Briefs Company. And we did a massive global survey on briefing, on the brief that the client gives to the agency. We spoke to nearly 1,000 big clients and 800 big agencies. Now, we're talking about million or 10 million peso campaigns or bigger, big campaigns, okay? And we did a survey of briefing. So the first question we asked was, is it difficult to produce good work without a good client brief? And as you'll see, first of all, the clients, 90% said yes. You need a brief. You need a brief. Then when we talked to the agencies, almost the same numbers said, see, you need a good brief, okay? It's true. Without a good brief, it's difficult. The next question we asked, are the briefs that you write or your client writes, do they provide clear strategic direction? The client said, yeah, pretty clear, pretty clear. I'm good at writing briefs. My briefs are real good. The agency said, I have no fucking clue what they're talking about. That's an amazing chart, yeah? That's an amazing chart. I've never seen a bigger space between two bar charts in anything ever, yeah? In anything. They're talking about the same thing, yeah? So there's a problem, yeah? So we ask the agencies, you know, for the 95% of briefs that aren't good enough, what's missing? And what they said to us was, first of all, most of these briefs are not single-minded, yeah? Remember that strategy is a choice. Strategy is deciding what we're not going to do. Clients can't do that. Next, they said, it's not clear. There's missing no clarity, and in particular, there's no clear strategy for me to execute. The number one thing missing, clear objectives. I don't know what the point is. I don't know what they want. How can I make a good campaign if I don't know what the objective is, okay? So how do we brief better? How do we help our clients brief better? Here are the great lessons of the last couple of years of briefing. First of all, before we get to brief, have a strategy. 60, 70, 80% of clients don't have a strategy before they come to the agency, okay? Strategy and tactics, different things. Strategy, the Greek word for strategos, is general, making the plan. Tactics comes from tactikos, the Greek word for arranging things. Strategy before tactics. Finish your strategy. Most clients don't have a finished strategy before they go and talk to the agency. So they keep changing their minds. So what does a good strategy look like if you're a client? You only need 3 things to have a clear strategy for your agency. There are so many people talking bullshit about strategy, it's unbelievable, right? They make it more and more complicated. It's not complicated. It's difficult, but it's not complicated. If you want a good brand strategy, you need to answer just 3 questions. Question 1, who are we targeting? And who are we not targeting? Question 2, what is my position? What is my message to the targets? And number 3, again, what are my objectives? If you can answer target, position, objectives, you, my friend, have a strategy. Most companies don't have that, but they go and talk to their agencies anyway. Let's talk about objectives for a second. People get confused about objectives. So, either side of you, there are different kinds of objectives. The senior managers, executive C-suite usually produce bullshit like this, okay? They have some kind of broad business aspiration, right? Break 100 million pesos, yeah? Reverse the sales decline, whatever it might be. That's the top level objective. We have to achieve those, but they're not very helpful. On the other side, we have tactical goals. 400,000 social mentions, whatever it might be. That's too low level for us. As a marketer, you should have something in the middle. Marketing or brand objectives should look like this. This comes from a Effie-winning campaign in Australia, okay? If you have something like this, you're good. If you don't have something like this, you're not good, okay? It's that simple. So this is what a good objective looks like. Increase consideration among blue-collar workers from 15% to 65% by June 2016, okay? If you have one of those, you know what you're doing. You are well-trained. Why do I say that? Well, because first of all, it's specific. What do I want to do? Consideration. Second, it's specific on the target. Here is my target. Then we have a measurable benchmark and a measurable goal, and we have a timeline by which it must be achieved. Perfect. And we know from research, if you have 4 or 5 of these objectives for your plan, you will be probably successful. If you have more than 4 or 5, you will not be successful. Because once you start having too many objectives, you spread yourself too thin, and your objectives stop being objectives. And they start becoming dreams that will never come true. Yeah? We know from research, a handful of these for your brand, there's a chance it will work. Okay, back to briefing though. Remember, the briefing is a conversation. It's not just emailing a document to the agency. Spend time with the agency, but keep it tight. We call it a brief because in English, brief means a document, but also a short document. Remember, give your agency a ballpark budget. Doesn't have to be the real budget, but an idea of what you might spend and any other concerns. Now, here's the two most important ones for clients. Don't start giving your agency your shitty little ideas, okay? If you pick up a pen in the meeting and you say to your agency, what I want is I want a little ad like this and the guy does this, stop, yeah? That's wrong. Don't do that. You have creative agencies. Don't brief them that way. Think about your brief like a diving board. That's what you're building with your brief. And then your agency can come on the diving board, bounce, and do an amazing ad. You build the board, but you never get to go on the board. Your ideas are shit. The creative agency's ideas are great. Your job is strategy. The agency's job is tactics. Remember that, and it will help tremendously. Agencies are fundamentally cowardly. They will never tell you your brand is shit, okay? It's true, come on. But they will only tell you your brief was good when it really was good. It's one of the great compliments for a marketer's career when the agency says, hey, that was a great brief. Okay, number 2, budgeting. Let's talk about budgeting. So let me show you how most of your budgets and most of your clients' budgets will be set right now for next year. Somewhere back in Mexico City, your finance department, first of all, works out what your revenues were this year. Let's say it's 30 million pesos, whatever, okay? They work out a compound annual growth rate, your growth, and they work out that it's about 10%. So they project that next year, we can expect revenues of about 33 million pesos. Then what they say is, we will make 2% of that, of those revenues, available for marketing. And there you go. Here's your ad budget. Thank you very much, okay? I've just described how 95% of companies in Mexico set their budget. And you know what? That's total bullshit, yeah? If you explain that to a child would go, that doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Because it doesn't, right? It doesn't. First of all, if we already know how much fucking money we're going to make, what is the point of any of you? What is the point of me? What is the point of this? If the company has already recorded how much money they will make next year, why are we bothering? It's stupid. Second, where does the 2% come from? Yeah? Where did the finance department get the 2%? There is a location. They get this 2% from a famous database known as the SOMA database. S-O-M-A. It stands for straight out of my ass, right? It's bullshit. Look at what we've got. That's what we have to work with, and it makes advertising and marketing a cost. What it says to the company is, I already know how much money I'm going to make. Now here's some money for your advertising, go away. It's bullshit. Advertising is an investment. If you make a good investment, you'll make more money. We need to change this, yeah? We need to change all of this. So I recommend zero-based budgets. Start from a zero amount every year. Start from zero allocations of how you spend your money. Develop smart objectives. Work out their value. Brief your agencies on your objectives and let them work with you on what it would cost to achieve the objective. Agree the total amount you need, ideally, to achieve your objectives, and then produce a proper marketing plan. Let me tell you how you may wonder, is your marketing plan good or not? Let me give you one simple test to see whether your marketing plan is good or not. On the final slide, it can only have two things. It should have a requested amount of investment, and it should have a projected incremental return, okay? Because what you're saying is, if you like this plan, you give me X, I'll give you Y, okay? Now, I'm not saying you'll get that money. What I'm saying is you're going to propose it to the company, and your company will either say, sí, or more likely they will say, no, right? But if they say no, you've already said, give me X, I'll give you Y. You don't say that right now. You just wait to get some bullshit figure, okay? Now you've shown them what you can do. If they do say no, the one thing you must not do is allow the company to say, okay, I can't give you that much money, but I still want the same return, okay? You cannot let those two numbers disconnect. You have to say, no, I'll come back to you. If you give me a smaller investment, I'll give you a smaller incremental return. You must not let these two numbers ever get separated, or you look nonsensical, and so does your plan. And timing is crucial. This bullshit budgeting happens around about now, maybe a few months ago. The finance team have to get the budgets ready. If you wait for this to be given to you, that's it. So before your finance team tell you how much money you have, get ahead of the process and do it properly. Again, I'm not saying you get the money, but what I'm saying is you need to show them what you could do before they give you some bullshit approach that makes no sense to anyone. One thing that will help you is excess share of voice, the single most important scientific principle of advertising. We've known this for 30 years. If you look at any market in any country, and you look at a brand's share of voice and its share of market, there is a remarkable equilibrium between the two. If you have a brand, for example, with 10% market share, all things being equal, it will have a 10% share of voice. It's spooky how consistent this pattern emerges. It's a little bit of a wrinkle, right? Because if you look at it, small brands actually have to spend a lot more. It's not fair on small brands. Big brands can spend a little less. But generally, the equilibrium holds true. Why is this useful for budgeting? Well, let's say you want to grow. Let's say a brand wants to increase its investment in advertising. We use excess share of voice. So excess share of voice is take the share of voice percentage, subtract the share of market percentage, and you get a number. So here, in this case, look, excess share of voice is 0. 10 minus 10 is 0. But let's say this brand wants to grow. It gets ambitious. It doubles its advertising budget. Well, suddenly, we got 20% share of voice and only a 10% share of market. Well, look what happened. Our excess share of voice is plus 10. Why is that important? It's important because the equilibrium always wins. Over the next few years, what will happen to that brand if it keeps the 10% excess is it will get more market share. The reverse is also true. If a brand starts to get lazy, starts to spend less, and now has a negative share of voice, the equilibrium will win again, and eventually that brand will lose share. You need to use this tool to help you budget. Yeah? If you want more market share, you're going to have to invest more money. It's no matter how good your execution is, how good your creative is, you need excess share of voice. In my experience, when you present this to the finance team, they get it, they respect it, and it helps you make the case. Okay, number 3. The long and the short of it, super important. The great theory of modern advertising. This is Peter Field and Les Burnett. They're old British advertising experts. They've been looking at advertising for 30 years. And they wrote a paper called The Long and the Short of It 10 years ago. It's the most important insight for Mexico. And it's made them very famous. So, what does the long and the short of it say? When Peter and Les studied growth, what they learned was sales uplift over base growth. When they looked at thousands of cases of how advertising drives growth over time, they found there were 2 different trajectories to growth. The first trajectory, they call the short of it. We would call it activation, performance marketing, promotion, yeah? As you can see here, we spend a little bit money on a digital promotion, and look, our sales go, woo, until we stop spending money on it, and it goes pretty much back to where it was before. That's not a bad thing. We spend a little bit of money, we get a really good return. But there is a second trajectory to growth. Longer, slower, called brand building. It takes longer, but it sets up the future. Yeah? The short of it is for now, the brand building is for future sales. And don't think of these two as competitors. You need them both. In Mexico, you do too much short and not enough long. Okay? If you balance it in the correct way, you will make more money. Let me explain what I mean. Let me give you an example from McDonald's. So, here's an example of short. This is short communication, okay? Classic example. It's a bit of digital communications, and it's short because of a number of reasons. First, it's promoting a product, the McRib sandwich. Second, it's targeted, in this case, to people who go to McDonald's and who also order through Uber Eats. So it's targeted to a particular segment. It's bottom of the funnel. It's trying to drive preference and purchase. It's about activating demand that's probably already there. You all like McRib sandwiches. Here's a McRib sandwich. Go and buy it. We're trying to get immediate demand. It has an instant response if it works. In the next days, week, we will see an impact. And this is one of 100 targeted performance ads that McDonald's will run every month. Lots and lots and lots of little campaigns. And we can measure this with ROI. We spent 1,000 pesos on this ad. We think it generated 10,000 orders. ROI, okay? But that's the short of it. Everybody gets that. Here's an example of the long of it, again, from McDonald's.
Thought you might be hungry.
Why is this the long? Why is this the long? It's about the brand, not about a product. It's aimed at everyone. You build brands to the whole market. It's emotional. It builds future demand. It won't get you sales in the next week, but it is changing the memory structures of the consumer's brain. It is changing how we think about McDonald's. And we will run this campaign for a long time. And we won't test it with ROI, we'll test it with brand tracking. If I get the right proportion of brand building and performance, I will make the most money. These two work together. Think of it like the alley-oop in basketball. One player at the back of the court throws the long pass. Another player at the front of the court dunks it into the net. The long sets up the short. They work better together. Now, a lot of people say that's bullshit. You don't need two kinds of ads. You can have brand performance. You can have an ad that builds the brand and sells the product. We can tell everyone, hey, buy a McRib, and then we can have a kid crying a bit about it in the background saying he loves his mom, right? We'll try and do it all in a 30-second ad. Why don't we think that's the best approach? Well, it's kind of like taking a long shot from the back of the court on your own rather than doing the alley-oop. It looks good. It's flashy, but often it doesn't work. The odds are against you, yeah? We have data on this. When we look at campaigns that try and do long and short in the same ad, they sometimes work. But when you split up your investment into long and short activities, the effectiveness is much greater. You need to do both, but do them differently. Now, how much money should you spend on long versus short? According to Field and Burnett, when they did the research, the ideal balance was 40% short, 60% of your budget long, okay? But that research was only done on consumer goods brands. They've now done the research from thousands of companies in thousands of different categories. And here you see, generally, the right mix. If you want an even better tip, there's a company in New Zealand called Tracksuit. They have a calculator. You can enter about 10 questions about your business, and it will tell you the optimum split of long and short. Just search for Tracksuit calculator, yeah? When you look at these numbers, the first reaction of most Mexican marketers is, fuck me, that's a lot of money to spend on brand, yeah? There's very few people in this room working off a budget where 50, 60, 80% of the budget goes on brand. Why is it so high? Let me explain. When you do the research on categories, what you learn is that most of your customers are not buying at the moment. In B2B, 75% of companies buy computers only once every 4 years. 80% of companies change bank only once every 5 years. In B2C, only 90% of consumers buy cars every 10 years. If you target these people with performance right now, they're not buying. Most of them aren't in the market. So you're building brands to go after the people for later when they come into the market. We call this rule the 95-5 rule. On average, 95% of your customers are not in the market right now. And that tells you something. It explains the long and the short. You definitely want to spend about half your budget on the 5% of the market who are buying right now. That makes sense. But it also makes sense to spend the other half of your budget on the 95% of the market who aren't coming yet, but who will come later. And when they come, we will already have them. This is the reason the long and the short work best together. Why don't companies get this? Why are so many companies spending too much money on performance? Well, this chart looks good in theory, but you've got to remember that blue line might take 2, 3, 4 years to fully work. Most companies don't think 2, 3, 4 years. They're locked in a 12-month cycle. And when you look at the world from a 12-month point of view, brand building doesn't give you good ROI. Performance marketing gives you a much better return. So that's how we spend our money. The following year, we do the same thing again, and the same thing again. We are trapped in a performance trap. And ironically, ROI means we make less money than we would have made if we got the right balance of long and short. It's Groundhog Day in most Mexican businesses. Peter Drucker said it best. You have to produce results in the short term, but you also have to produce results in the long term. And the long term is not simply the adding up of short terms. We have to take a long view with some of our money to make more money. Okay, number 4. Media. So, I thought because we have people from the TV industry, from radio, from TikTok, from Meta, I would give you the ranking of the best media in advertising to the worst, okay? What's the number 1 media you should all use down to the least good one, okay? I've got all the data. You ready? This is going to create a bit of a shock. You ready? The best advertising media of them all is... No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because it depends, okay? It depends on your positioning. It depends on your objective. Are you going for long or short? We have great data that shows us. Some media, sponsorship and cinema, are fantastic for long term, no good for short. Others, social, search, display, brilliant for short, not so good for long. It depends. It depends on your target. It depends on your message. It depends on your budget. Here's what it really depends on. It depends on you getting your strategy done before you go to tactics, yeah? If you answer these questions, position, objective, target, budget, Then we can work out the right media. But if you don't do that, it's just bullshit. When I work on brand building, when I train marketers, it's the same sequence. We start with diagnosis, research and segmentation. We move to strategy, and only then do we do tactics. Diagnosis feeds your strategy. Strategy then feeds tactics. You cannot do good communication if you don't have your strategy done first. It's crucial. So I can't answer the question, which is the best of all the media? But I can answer this question. Is digital better than traditional? Or is traditional better than digital? You ready? I've got data on this. Analytic Partners looked at hundreds of campaigns and looked at the impact and ROI of online and offline. Online performed here. Online performs here. Woo! Online is the champion. Digital is better than traditional. Fuck you, TV. It's all over. Except when you put them together, guess what? They're more powerful than either of them. It isn't even about which is the best. Yeah? It's about combining them together. I'll tell you something else. The word digital doesn't make any fucking sense. Give me an example of a medium that isn't digital, okay? Mexico City, you have outdoor digital. You have digital radio, right? Digital TV. It's all digital. It doesn't matter anymore. Drop it. Here's the point. I want all of these different tools together. I want to combine them into a campaign because they work best as a campaign. When Analytic Partners looked at taking money from TV and putting it onto online video like TikTok, you know what they found? It has a 35% increase in effectiveness. So take some money from TV and put it on TikTok. You know what they also found? If you take some money from TikTok and put it on TV, it has a 35% impact. More diversity works. In fact, they found it for everything. When you take your money from one medium and put a little bit of it into another, the synergy gives you more. I think we've forgotten the secret formula of integrated communication. A times B is always greater than 2A or 2B. Yeah? And the A can be any medium and the B can be any medium. You'll always get a better result doing TV and digital video than spending it all on TV or spending it all on TV. You want to mix them together. They're always going to be more powerful. Yeah? This is my favorite chart of all time. Analytic Partners looked at campaigns with just one channel. Could be radio, could be outdoor, could be Facebook, just one channel. Then they looked at what happens when you compare it to campaigns that use two channels, any two channels. Guess what? Two channels is on average 19% more effective. Then they looked at three channels. Three channels is 23% more effective than one. And it keeps going. 4 channels, 31%. 5 channels, 35%. Spread your money across multiple tools. Create integration. Diversity really works. I say to you diversity works, and everyone thinks I'm talking about a team. Well, that's true. A diverse team of men and women from different backgrounds works better than an old team of white males. But it also applies to media. Diverse media controlled in a campaign works better. Number 5, codification. So let me tell you about a famous piece of research that was done 10 years ago. Ehrenberg Bass surveyed consumers who'd seen 143 different ads the previous night, a selection of the ads. When they interviewed consumers could only recall 40% of them the next day. The ones that they'd seen, they could recall 40%. And when they were asked which was the brand in the ad they could recall, again, they could only recall 40%. 40% of 40% is 16%. Let me put it another way. 84% of all these ads were a total waste of fucking money. Yeah? Because the consumer the next day couldn't remember the ad or the brand. They've already failed. Now, if you want to make people remember your ad, use some of the things I'm going to talk about, okay? You can use your budget, creative, emotion. They'll remember your ad. But if you want the consumer to remember your brand, which is kind of the point, You need to codify the shit out of your ad. Let me explain what that means. So every client has brand codes. They have different names, but it all means the same thing. Sometimes people call them distinctive brand assets. Other people call them distinctive assets or fluent devices. They are super important to your success. Because when you show a client, a consumer, your brand code, it flicks a switch in their brain and everything about your brand comes to mind. You need these codes. Good brands create a palette of these codes, a handful of codes, logo plus 4. Let me give you an example. Cartier, a beautiful brand, brilliantly codified. Cartier only has 5, maybe 6 codes. Obviously the logo. Then they have their specific deep red Pantone. They also have the reverse C. They have their famous dark red with golden leaf box. And finally, they have the Panther. Cartier is a big brand, but like all great brands, it only has a few codes. That's all it needs. More codes doesn't always mean good news. Now, once I've got these codes, you know what I do with them? I codify the shit out of everything. My windows, my packaging, everything. Because the first rule of advertising is you've got to fucking know that it's me or there's no point. Yeah? If you don't know it's me, the game is over. Let me show you one of 1,000 ads from Cartier. Let me show you their Christmas ad. Look how codified this thing is. Every single pixel screams the brand codes. Look out for them. Boxes of the presents. The little panther. The colors in the corner. The hat of each of the men. The color of the Christmas baubles. You don't need the logo to know who's making that ad, right? And if you look at any Cartier work, it is incredibly codified. My challenge with codes is I fight with too many agencies who want to be creative. They have to be creative within the codes of the brand. Clients get bored with their codes because they look at them all the time. What they don't realize is consumers don't pay that much attention. I spent many years working for Veuve Clicquot, the champagne brand. They wanted to change their brand from yellow to white because they thought everyone was getting sick of yellow. They were getting sick of yellow. Consumers don't think about it so much. Remember, you create ads in a totally different way from how consumers receive them. You spend months focused on these. Doesn't even notice, yeah? They don't even notice it half the time. You need to codify, codify, codify everything. A simple checklist. If an ad does not have 3 codes, there's something wrong with it. The most important rule of advertising, you must know that it's me. A brand, as Byron Sharp says, that looks like itself. Okay, number 6. Creative. This man here is Paul Dyson. He's a very famous statistician, and he did a very famous piece of research. He looked at what drives the effectiveness and profitability of advertising in top 10 list. Did a huge analysis. Guess what the number 1 driver of overall effectiveness and profitability for advertising is? It's the size of the brand. Remember that. It's unfair. Capitalism is unfair. Big brands have more impact than small brands just because they do. But number 2 on his list was creativity. Creative quality is a 12 times multiplier on the effectiveness of advertising. In red there, you see some of the different media factors. Media is important. but you can make a strong argument that creative is even more important. We've spent too long in this industry talking about media. Is Facebook better than Twitter? Is TV better than radio? It's the wrong focus. Media is just the pipe. What you put down the pipe is more important. This was a realization from David Abbott, one of the most famous advertising thinkers of all time. David lived through this era of everyone talking about media, but not talking about the ad itself. And he came up with one of the great quotes in the history of advertising. Shit delivered at the speed of light is still shit, right? Doesn't matter what media you're using. Is your ad any good? Do you have a great ad? Everything should start with that. We find it again and again. If you look at TV, 2/3 of TV's impact isn't to do with the media or the targeting. It's to do with, is the ad any good? Digital video, TikTok, YouTube, more important. Is the ad any good? It's even quite important with online display. We need to worry about creativity because creativity matters. Number 7. Emotion. Emotion. Now, I say to a room full of advertising people, emotion, and everyone goes, oh, it's the puppy and the baby, yeah? And the dog with 3 legs, yeah? Yes, that's emotion. But I want you to think much broader about emotion. I want you to think about the giant spinning wheel of emotional options we have for your executions. I'm talking about things like startling and scaring the fuck out of the audience. I'm talking about joyfulness. I'm talking about surprising them. I'm talking about powerful. I'm talking about sad. I'm talking about pulling the emotional levers to have an impact. The reason that's so important is because when we look at emotional campaigns, they outperform everything else. There are 2 data points. The whole world's advertising is getting more and more rational every year. We know emotional ads are more powerful than ever. It makes no sense. If you look at rational ads, they perform quite well. If you look at campaigns that combine rational and emotional, they do better. But if you look at just pure, don't care, fuck off, let's be emotional ads, they destroy everything else. You're Mexican. You should be emotional. You're meant to be one of the world's most beautiful emotional cultures. Make emotional ads. But I find myself in a stupid place. I'm making a rational argument for emotional advertising. I shouldn't. What I should do is just bring on the horses and Stevie Nicks and give you 1 minute of emotion.
I took my love, took it down. Climbed a mountain and I turned around. Well, I've been afraid of changing, 'cause I've built my life around you. But time makes you bolder, even children get older, and I'm getting older too. Take my love, take it down. And if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, well, a landslide will bring it down.
That man loves his horse. So let's do more emotion because emotion is effective. Pre-testing. Okay, we have a lot of creative people in the room. I don't want to trigger you too much, okay? Pre-testing your ads in the future may be something to think about. So in my life in marketing, there are 2 reactions to pre-testing. The first reaction is I do my research, I brief my agency, I trust my agency, and I go with their ideas. Data dulls creativity. The other side of it is, I'm a marketer, I research everything, Why not my biggest investment, which is my advertising spend? Data delivers assurance for me and my boss that this will work. In the last 20 years, I have to say, I listen more to the blue argument than the red. There are too many good creative agencies that make this same argument to me. But my message to you is, it's changing quickly. Traditionally, when we pre-tested ads, we had a focus group or some kind of qualitative feedback, and we had the monkeys running the zoo. Consumers would tell you how to make the ad better. It didn't really make a lot of sense. No more. We have
Next 2 places.
We have online testing platforms that now enable us in 24 hours to test your ad before you buy media, or test an animatic version of your ad before you even decide to make it. This is an ad from Amstel. Amstel weren't sure if this campaign was going to work. It was meant to feature Jeff Bridges. They made an animatic version for $2,000. They tested it for $10,000 using this animatic.
Next 2 places. I should know because I'm Jeff Bridges. Here in Amsterdam, a city with more bridges than any other, they understand that bridges are powerful things. They allow people to come together, find common ground.
No, because, well, I'm Jeff Bridges. You see, a bridge is not just a physical structure that connects 2 places. Oh, they allow people to come together, find common ground.
We are now able to go to representative samples in 24 hours and predict how successful your ad will be in long-term brand building and short-term performance. If you're spending more than 10 million pesos on advertising for the price of 100,000 or even 10,000 pesos, you need to be part of these testing systems. You also get creative feedback from the algorithm now about what works better and what doesn't. And this is phenomenally useful in getting buy-in from your finance team to spend that money. One other point I have to mention. We are 2 years away from synthetic data. Data taken exclusively from AI. I'm already seeing examples. I believe in the next 2 to 3 years, we can immediately pre-test ads using AI, and it will be 95 to 98% predictive of what would happen when you launch the ad. We have to accept pre-testing has got better, and we should be considering it as part of our approach. 2 more to go. Number 9. Wear out. Super important. Brand new. Nobody knows this, okay? So if you grew up in the 1990s like me in business school, we were all taught about wear out, about advertising very quickly needing to be changed, yeah? So we had models like this. You'd look at the time in weeks that a campaign ran. You'd look at the sales uplift. You'd have your basic baseline of sales. And then as you run the campaign, you would see incremental sales do something like this. There's a wear-in period as the ad gets its impact. And then there's wear-out as consumers get sick of the ad. Except this chart has turned out to be total bullshit with modern testing techniques. Oh, and remember agencies in the room? Agencies love the idea of making new ads, right? They can't resist, so they love this. Oh yeah, as soon as the ad's out, it's like, what are we going to do next, right? So, does wear out really happen? System 1 tested thousands of ads that went from being 1 month old to as much as being 2 years and more old, okay? And they looked at ads that were still out there after 2, 3, 4 years. On their average assessment, ads that were 1 month old scored on average 2.2 out of 5, yeah? Ads that were 2 years or more also scored 2.2 out of 5. And all the other data points in between, with a margin of error, it's 2.2. Yes, people in advertising land, you're a bit fucked with this, right? You don't want me to talk to any more clients, that's for sure, right? Because if you've made a great ad, and you have in many cases, I would just keep running that ad because it's going to keep working. You got a winner, keep playing the winner. Oh, Analytic Partners did the same thing. They looked at 50,000 campaigns that had been pulled. 14 of them had worn out. 51,218 were still working. That's important data. Kantar have thousands of examples of ads that are not wearing out on their database. This is an ad for Twinings. It was made originally in 2013, and it's been run in about 15 different markets continually ever since. It's a nice, musical, beautiful brand-building ad. When it was launched, top 1% for enjoyment, top 1% for distinctiveness, top 5% for impact. When they measured the ad again, 5 years later, top on everything. When they measured again, 10 years later, top of everything. Shit ads stay shit, but good ads stay good. And if you're smart, once you've got a good ad, keep rolling the ad. This has huge implications. Learn patience as a client. If you've got a winner, stay with the winner. Resist the attraction of launching new campaigns. Here's data from Communicus in America. They looked at 100 campaigns that had been pulled. 25% of the campaigns were pulled for good reason. They just weren't relevant anymore. They're promoting the wrong product. But the other 74% were just pulled because the client said, well, you know, we need a new campaign. This has been running for like, you know, months now. When they looked at those new campaigns, 1 out of 5 performed better than the old campaign. The other 4 performed worse. That's a stunning statistic, yeah? We love new things that are less good. When I talk to the guys at System 1 who test these ads, what they say is they go to clients and say, you're about to launch a new ad. We have data that shows your new ad is much worse than your old ad. You know the reaction of the client and the agency? They're disappointed because they want to keep making new ads, even if they're not as impressive or as impactful. They're missing the point. Your purpose is not to make ads. Your purpose is to build brand. And if old brands do it well, stay with the old brand. Dust down your old ads. They still work as good as ever. Here's another tip. Invest twice as much money next year in an amazing ad. Spend some money on pre-testing. Make an amazing double spend ad and then run it for the next 3 or 4 years. Because that's a smarter move than new ads all the time, most of which don't work particularly well. I can give you 20 points of excess share of voice. Stop creating new ads and just keep investing in the ones that work. And plan for campaign ability. Build ads that will last for many years and stand by them. I can tell you right now, the most effective Christmas ad in the UK, it will be this ad. The holidays are coming from Coca-Cola. Yeah? This campaign is more than 40 years old. This particular version of it was filmed 20 years ago. It's been running in the UK every year for the last 15 years. It's getting more effective, not less. And it's embarrassing for Coca-Cola. They keep making new Christmas ads. Shithouse. This ad keeps smashing them. Stop with the new ads. Yeah? Play your great cards. They still work as good as ever. Finally, number 10. Evaluation. You have to learn how to evaluate your campaigns. And there are a number of options. The first option is just to look at, did we reach our sales target for the year? This is a mistake. Let me explain. The first Mexican I ever got to know was Hugo Sanchez, okay? When the World Cup was in Mexico and I was a teenager, it was very clear to me that Hugo Sanchez was the greatest fucking footballer at the tournament. I was like, who is this little guy, right? He was amazing. Most passes, incredible performance. Mexico, I don't like to mention this too much, but Mexico got knocked out by the Germans in the quarterfinals, yeah? It's normally what happens to the English, but in this year it was the Mexicans. You got beat in your own World Cup by the fucking Germans. That's got to hurt, right? My point is, the Mexican team didn't win, but Hugo Sanchez was the best player at the tournament. You can't look at overall sales to judge advertising performance. Your ad might be great. What if your price or your product wasn't correct? So maybe look at your campaign at the objective level. Remember these objectives we talked about earlier? Make sure you review them at the end of the year. Make sure you learn what did and didn't work. See if you hit the 65%. Now, many of you want to go deeper. You want to look at it not at the strategic level, but the tactical level. You can use brand lift studies, yeah? I work a little bit for YouTube, and I have to say brand lift research now is fantastic, yeah? They can test your YouTube ad against an audience that didn't see it versus one that did, and they can show you the impact on awareness, consideration, preference. It's amazing. But it only tests whether one medium worked or not. We need to test all of them. Be very careful looking at first or last touch attribution. It gives you the wrong idea. It's like saying that the sales assistant in the big Mexican department store is making a perfume brand 100 million pesos a month because she's selling all this perfume. She's just the last touch. There are a dozen different impacts to get the person in making the purchase. So what we need, of course, is media mix modeling. We need to do econometrics, which is getting cheaper and cheaper, to understand what really is working and what really is not. Let me show you why. This is what happens when you look at your different channels using last touch attribution. You see there's a bunch of sales you would have got anyway, and then the rest of the sales come from, as you can see here, mostly branded search, non-branded search. But they don't. That's just the last touch attribution. If you use media mix modeling, the whole picture changes, yeah? And suddenly we see a much more interesting picture. And if you look at the incrementality, what we see now is branded search goes from 16% of sales to 1%, whereas online video goes from 3% to 6%. You need econometrics to understand what works and what doesn't work. And let me tell you why you must evaluate the work. I work with a lot of smart CMOs, yeah? They're not smarter than other marketers. They're not better taught. They have one trait in common. For the last 25, 30 years of their career, every year they've learned from what they've done. They've learned from their research, and they've got better. And after 25 or 30 years, you get some pretty impressive CMOs. Are you learning from your research and getting better, or do you treat every year like it's a new year? We need to learn, to evolve, to improve. So, these are my 10 effectiveness principles. This is a golden age of effectiveness for Mexico, for every other agency and marketer who's prepared to understand and listen to the powerful insights being generated. I guess what I'm saying to you individually is, take your place in this world. Learn from what has been written. Use it to your advantage. In summary, the Effectiveness Omnibus tells you there are 10 things to do with your work next year. First of all, learn to brief. Second, budget better, budget earlier, budget properly with more data to get more money. Use the long and the short in the right balance to build brand and drive sales in a completely effective way. Be media neutral. Look at all media the same and get your strategy done before you make your media choices. And remember, 2 different media together are almost always better than one on its own. Codify every aspect of your ad, yeah? It has to look like you over and over again. You cannot be too obvious. The consumer has to know it's me. Your creative matters. Get the good agencies. Get their best creative teams. The quality of the ad remains one of the most important factors of all. Drive emotion. Don't be afraid of emotion, even in B2B. Emotion is effective. Pre-testing is different now. You should start to consider it as you do big campaigns. A small investment can improve things and give you evidence of success. Wear out does not exist. If you've got a great ad, keep using your great ad. There's no reason to keep developing new campaigns. You're sick of it. The consumer is not sick of it. And finally, use the right forms of evaluation to learn, test, and get better. This is the Effectiveness Omnibus. Gracias.